take a couple minutes and talk about this book tonight. These are called The Fundamentals. This is a 4-volume set. Obviously, I only have one of the 4 with me tonight. These are on my shelf in my office. Not one that I picked up a lot or used a lot. I've used it a couple times. But through TAP, I keep coming back to this. I'm going to give you the background on it, but it was published pretty much from the beginning in a 4-volume set. It's been republished more recently in either a 2-volume set, or I found for the first time, this was actually in the donation cabinet yesterday, a 1-volume set. I think this was put out by Kregel Publications. They put it in a one-volume set. You don't usually see that. It's usually in a 4-volume set that looks like this. Let me give you a little bit of background on the fundamentals, and then we'll talk about some of the people in it in just a minute. This was written and put together from 1910 until 1915, and it was published originally in 12 separate volumes, 12 small volumes, which at the end of that, in 1917, they condensed into 4 volumes and published it in 4 volumes from 1917 through the rest of the 20th century. It was commissioned by 2 men who were not in the ministry, brothers, Lyment and Milton Stewart. Lyment was really the one that was serious about it. He was a Presbyterian. He was dispensational in his doctrine. And he was very, very, very concerned about the liberal way that churches were going. In 2022, I think this guy would be horrified, if you know what I mean, because he was very concerned about all this in the early 1900s. He was the head of Union Oil, so he had money. So him and his brother paid to put together what they considered the fundamentals of the faith. They commissioned all the articles, which I'll talk about. They paid to publish it, and then they paid to mail it to every pastor and church and school that they knew of. They paid for it themselves to get out there. That's how it got going. It was personally commissioned by lay people, not by pastors. They ordered in here, and this is full of 90 essays on 90 specific topics that they found crucial to what the fundamentals were of the faith. Those 90 essays were written by 64 different authors. So 64 guys were involved in writing these 90 essays. So each one of them had 1 or 2. I don't think anybody had more than like 3 or 4. And those are the guys that put this together. They did it over a 5-6 year period of time. Then they published it and mailed it out to churches all across. It is still obviously in publication today. The first editor of it was R.A. Torrey. That name should hopefully mean something to you. And there are some Pennsylvania connections to R.A. Torrey. And we will talk about him specifically. But I have the contents here of the 90 articles. And I thought I would just read through some of the authors, some of them that might mean something to you, and some of those that might sound familiar to you. Some of them, I don't know who they are, and I'm going to have to get into them. One of them is Arno Gaebelein. I've used Arno Gaebelin's book on Psalms as I did the Wednesday night Bible study a year ago, and I'm using one of his tonight, too. We have, of course, R.A. Torrey did a couple of them. Erdman did a couple of them. C.I. Scofield did some of them. Thomas Spurgeon, Charles Spurgeon's son, did one. We had, I think I mentioned Sir Robert Anderson, the guy who I talked about earlier. He did one. John Riley, G. Campbell Morgan. That's just a few that might be familiar to you that put these articles together and helped to commission the fundamentals, this book that has stood the test of time for the last 100 years or so.